Until Dawn is based on a PlayStation game, but instead of simply adapting the game's narrative, they concocted a new time loop story with only a few Easter eggs and nods to the source material. At least the new concept is fairly inventive, so join us and let's see how it holds up. Welcome everyone to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Tim.
Hello.
This is a horror movie podcast, and we get together to talk about horror films. It's that simple. And for the second week in a row, we went to the movies to go see something. We went to see Until Dawn, the video game adaptation. So that is what we're going to talk about today. We will start spoiler-free, as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we get into the spoilers. And of course, if you're enjoying the show on YouTube, please do hit the like button. It helps us out a bunch. And you can get bonus content and support us over at Patreon. But I'll tell you more about that at the end of the episode. So, yes, Until Dawn. Had you played the video game, Tim? I suppose that's the first question that one should ask.
I have, yeah. So I played it when, it first came out, which, was like, what, like over 10 years ago? Like,
I think it was exactly, I think it was 2015. I think it was exactly 10 years ago.
Yeah, so I played it, which I guess would that have been PS4 then, or PS3?
PS4.
PS4. Yeah, and I remember liking it, a fair amount at the time. It's been so long, so I don't remember a lot of the details, but I think like, it's not perfect, but I do like the idea of basically, having like a video game or like a horror movie that you control in a sense. And then so I haven't revisited. Like I know they had like a remake or remaster or something that came out recently, and I was kind of curious, but I don't know if my tastes have changed or if the novelty's worn off, but I've tried to play like some of these similar games. I don't know if they have like a specific word for them or whatever, but I played like some of the Dark Anthology ones and like The Quarry, which I think maybe it might be the most recent one. I'm not sure, but I played that like last year, and man, I just find them so dull and tedious. Like I don't know if it's the novelty worn off or if these ones just haven't been as good as Until Dawn, but like it just feels like there's so much filler while you're waiting for, like the good stuff to happen. Like when I was playing The Quarry, it's like, okay, cool. Oh, that was a nice cutscene. And then it's like, okay, now it's like 15 minutes of me walking around, pressing X to search for a clue. All right, then we'll walk around some more. And then like, okay, now something's happening. And it's like, okay, now it's another 15, 20 minutes of just walking around. So, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with these types of games.
Yeah, I never really liked the game that much, to be honest. Mainly just because it's not really that much of a game. It's walk around, occasionally you press a button that flashes on screen. A QTE for the gamers who know the terms, but it's not a game that where you have like traditional combat or you're solving puzzles even, which would be fine. No, it's basically a movie that you control some of the walking and occasionally like can maybe live or die depending on if you hit a button at the correct time. And it's really unengaging to me. And I don't think the plot of Until Dawn, the game, is that great either. It's like okay at best. Honestly, the most interesting thing about it is that it had like 3 kind of notable actors, maybe 4 notable actors in it at the time for a game, which was, stood out a little bit. But fast forward 10 years later, this movie's coming out. They did put out a remaster of the game last year, which was kind of weird because the PS4 version runs on PS5 and runs quite well now. The new version doesn't run that well and doesn't look that night and day different, so it's a bit of a weird overall effect in the end. But the thing about the movie, which is really strange, is that they didn't just adapt the game. They didn't just take the story of the game and say, we're going to do the movie version of that like you do some other games or books or whatever. They kind of just said, okay, we're going to sort of make some references to it, but we're going to do a pretty original story that just kind of like feels like in the spirit, perhaps, of what the game is. And that was pretty clear when you saw the first trailer for this, because the trailer for this made it very, very clear that the premise to this movie was going to be a little Happy Death Day, kinda, but like the idea is that this group of characters go to this house in the middle of nowhere, and they're hunted down and killed. But then when they all die, the night resets, and something else is trying to kill them now. And the trailer fully reveals that at least they think that if they can make it until dawn, that'll break the curse and they'll be free, which isn't actually a terrible premise. It's just nothing to do with the game, which is really weird. So going into this, David F. Sandberg was directing, who's done a couple of horror movies, which are in the okay variety. You know, not particularly great, not particularly bad.
Like, good enough, I guess, to, you know, like, I guess depending on what you need. But yeah, not the worst, but definitely not the best. Not someone that I would get, like, super excited for.
Yeah, he was kind of returning to horror here, because he'd done, like, Shazam. Did he do both Shazams? I don't know if he did both, but he did at least one Shazam. Right. And this was kind of his return to the horror genre. So, yeah, I don't know. Like, the premise from the trailer seemed interesting enough, and this wasn't necessarily a priority watch, but Tim just kind of messaged me last week and said, hey, I'm going to go see Until Dawn. Shall I do it? And I'm like, I mean, yeah I guess. let's go watch Until Dawn.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things with that. I mean, I don't know if anyone's that interested, but I might have mentioned before, I'm actually living, like, very close to a movie theater now. Like, it's maybe even less than, like, a 5-minute drive, you know, depending, I guess, like, you know, traffic or whatever. So, you know, it's still kind of hard to get out with the kids and stuff, but just the fact that it's so close, I'm trying to, you know, make it a priority to go to the movies more, because I don't know, I miss going to the movies. So yeah, like, I don't think, you know, I mean, that doesn't mean we're gonna go see like every horror movie that comes out, but I will try to make a priority to, you know, do the bigger name stuff and certainly the more interesting stuff. And yeah, like we just did Sinners, which was like, you know, a huge big new movie. So I thought that was very important to see. And then this, I mean, I guess this is more on the interesting end. Like, I you know, wasn't like, oh my god, I bet it's gonna be so good, we should go see it. But I was like, you know, all right, I'm intrigued. I hadn't actually seen the trailer, but I remember you telling me like the premise of it, and I thought, oh, that premise does actually sound like really cool. Like, I'm kind of, you know, intrigued about what they'll do with that. So this one was a more of a curiosity watch than like a, you know, an excitement kind of thing.
And so if nothing else, it kind of fits the title better than anything in the game did. Because the name Until Dawn for the game didn't really... It was, okay, in a generic sense, they need to survive the night, but like, this actually works the title into the premise. Like, the whole surviving until dawn's the entire conceit of it. That said, though, I feel like if I'm randomly getting a message saying I'm going to go see Until Dawn, I feel like the movie count at the theater is going to be up significantly this year, which is actually quite good, because it means that when we get to catch up 2025 season, we won't actually have as much to do than we did this year.
This year is kind of packed with like big new horror stuff. Like, I forget if I mentioned out, like, but between seeing when we did the Sinners, but between seeing Sinners and like this kind of back to back, like I've seen so many trailers, because I kind of stopped like watching trailers online. Not that I'm against trailers. Like, I know some people are like, oh man, I never want to see a trailer. I don't want anything spoiled, which is fine. But like, I just usually like forget when someone's like, oh, a new trailer's out. And I'm like, oh, I'll check that out later. And then I never get around to it. But just like seeing two movies back to back, I was like, oh, here's like the trailer for him, and oh, here's a new, you know, 28 years later, and oh, here's you know, Megan 2 and like all this stuff. So yeah, I mean, I do think there's gonna be like a lot this year that we're gonna see, and like soon too. Like Final Destination is, you know, that'll probably definitely be a priority watch, and you know, that's coming up soon. Some other stuff, so I'm actually pretty excited, like for this year now, like seeing some of these trailers. And
the only thing I'm going to disagree with you there, Tim, is that I don't think it's any more than last year. I think last year was just as packed.
Sure.
I think the fact that we're still catching up in 2024 movies in May is evident of the fact that last year was packed.
That's fair. Yeah. I'm just more excited because, well, we already saw most of those.
But well, yeah, but I think the reason why you feel that way this year is because, by your own admission, you saw a bunch of trailers at the theater, and because you weren't at the theater that much last year, you weren't seeing all the trailers.
That's right. Yeah.
So you didn't get that feeling last year.
Yeah.
There's a simple science to this, which I've cracked with my big brain. Anyway, we should get into talking about the movie. I will say we had to delay this recording a couple times, and I have it's been 4 days since I watched the movie now, which is longer than usual. So depending on how memorable this movie is, this might be a bit more challenging than it sometimes is for me to remember things. So we'll find out. But without further ado, Tim, what did you think of Until Dawn?
I mean, I feel like we didn't really outright say it, but I mean, I feel like kind of alluded to some stuff. But I mean, I didn't think it was very good. But it's one of those things where I'll give it some credit, because I was kind of with the movie for a little bit. There was a lot of stuff like you were saying before with was it Sandberg, the director?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess like you were saying, with his style, a lot of it was well, this isn't great, but there's a baseline, competency there where, as I'm watching, I'm okay, the characters are okay enough, they're a little tropey or whatever, but I don't think the actors are that horrible. And then it's all right, yeah, the setup and the direction is whatever. But it was, a lot of it was to the point where, it's this isn't great, but it's not so bad that it's making me mad or bored or whatever. And I was following the story enough. I guess I was intrigued enough that it kind of kept me going for a while. And then again, once I get to the premise, I think that is such a solid premise that that was getting me through a lot of the first third or half of the movie or whatever. But it sucks because I just feel they squander it so much. Again, I think this is just a fantastic idea. There's so much you can do with the idea of people who get killed, and every time they get killed there's basically a new kind of horror movie thing.
Can I interject here with the big problem?
Of course, yeah.
Right. So from the trailer, as I said earlier, something kills them, right? And then time resets, and then something else is after them. That was my understanding from the trailer. But that's not actually completely accurate. And one of the things that I think kills the concept of this movie is that it's not just that something new's after them after they die. The stuff that was there before is still there too. So it just keeps adding more things, which might sound good on paper. You might think, oh, that sounds wild. It keeps getting crazier because now there's a serial killer, and there's a monster, and there's a ghost, and there's whatever it might be, right? The problem is, though, is that I thought that the premise sounded good because I thought, okay, it's keeps changing, which keeps it fresh, but there's kind of a grounded thing. It's okay, in your head, there's rules to survive in a slasher movie, and then there's rules to survive in a werewolf movie, and then there's rules to survive in and these aren't necessarily all things that are in the movie. I'm just picking different horror things. But because it just keeps adding more and more things on, I kept just kind of feeling okay, but why isn't this other thing that was already around already killed them? And then they tease something else where I'm that's actually more interesting than anything else that's in the movie. Are we ever going to see that again? No, we're not.
Yeah, and it kind of tops out at about, I don't know, 3 or 4 things.
Yeah.
And then because you were saying, I was okay, so we have the masked slasher kind of guy first, and then
which is loosely, I mean, it's not based on the character from the games, but the mask is similar to a mask that's worn in the game. So that was a little reference.
Yeah, that slipped by me. I didn't even remember that, but that's cool. But then it's I feel he keeps popping up, and then it's you're saying, I was kind of okay, I thought we were done with this guy now. But whatever. So yeah, that's a big problem. And then, I mean, we might have been thinking of the same thing. There was this one point where it's kind of teased about some of the other things that's seen and going on, and I was oh, well, I love this. I wish the rest of the movie was like this. But unfortunately, that's not it. And then I don't know. again, like, uh, I don't think it was very good. So maybe I'm being a little negative, but like, it wasn't like horrible enough that I was getting like super pissed off. I was just maybe a little bit more bummed that they're squandering a really great premise, and then I feel like I was losing interest more and more as it goes along. And then I will say the ending kind of pissed me off. I was like, oh, I feel like you really didn't get any answers or explanation or anything. And there's some stuff they bring up that I'm like, that's kind of bullshit. So, yeah, overall, I left with kind of a negative experience. Not the worst thing in the world, but I mean, there's definitely nothing that's like living up to the great premise that they introduce.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even necessarily need answers. Like, to be honest, I thought they kind of got closer to giving some kind of answers than I thought they needed to. Like, I was happy to just accept, oh, supernatural, like, egg timer on the wall is doing all this. It's cursed. End of discussion.
I would have... I would have been fine with that too, except for the fact that like they do bring up some stuff and they introduce a character that
they start unraveling it, because they feel like they have to, because that drives the plot into the third act.
Yeah, so it's like once they bring that stuff up, I'm like, well, all right, well now I'm pissed because it's like now I have more questions than I did before, and whatever. But I mean, we'll get to that in spoilers, obviously.
Yeah. I think the characters are bland. I didn't really like them. I didn't hate them. They weren't like annoying, but they were just kind of there. And I think part of it as well is that I feel like the premise of this movie is begging for to be a bit more lighthearted and be a bit more fun. And it just wants
absolutely.
to, and it wants to be dour. It wants to be dour because the main girl's looking for her missing sister, so she's all sad. And everyone else is like, oh, we need to go along with this and be good for her because she misses her sister. And like, there's not a lot of like fun to the characters or a lot of fun to the tone. And what's so funny is that there's one or two of the loops that do go for something more silly or fun. And I kept thinking, like, this doesn't really work because the tone's been so dour that I just don't feel like that doesn't feel like it belongs.
It's weird, yeah.
But if the whole movie felt like this, I might have really enjoyed it just being wacky. If it was going to be this, almost in a, you brought up Final Destination coming out soon, but almost in a Final Destination-y type way. But as it is, I was kind of just like, I was kind of frustrated. Also, the rule. This is the other thing. I like rules when there's anything supernatural going on, and part of the reason why I like the premise, like I said, is the idea that okay, the rules will change each loop because we're on a different thing. But there should be like a solid understanding of rules, like basic rules for each loop, that if they adhere to them, they've got a chance, right? However, not only does that kind of go out the window because it's not like a fresh thing each time, it's kind of like everything stacking on top of each other, and there's a bunch of other crap that's just kind of supernatural and random. They also like change the rules to even how the loops work at a certain point, where all of a sudden there's a part in the middle, and I don't want to say anything too spoilery here, but even though it was never a thing before, they suddenly don't remember like some loops. And that was never a thing early on. And that really annoyed me because I'm like, where did this come from? Is there a reason for this? No, it's not. It's just because they want to be like, whoa, it's actually been twice as many loops. And it's not even like that's a big surprise or anything. It's just, wait, so you don't remember how you died or how you did anything for those like 6 or 7 days, whatever it was. That's just really weird because there was none of that in the first chunk. I don't know. It's a movie that started off kind of neutral for me. It started off just okay, and I was hoping it was going to win me over, and instead, as it went, it more went down the way. And the third act especially, I really didn't really like much of. So yeah, there's and there is more references to the games. There's a couple of pretty direct ones which I'll talk about in spoilers, but it's more spiritual than it is anything else. That said, though, there is one actor from the games that's in the movie.
Yeah, so piggybacking off like some of the things you're saying, one, I just think this is really funny that it seems like they're doing this to like try to find the main character's missing sister, but they also mention it's like a year anniversary of their disappearance. I'm like, you waited a whole year? Like if you're trying to you're trying to find her. Like, wouldn't you go after maybe like a week or two or something? Like, I don't know. I just thought that was like kind of a weird thing.
Yeah, they kept chopping and changing because it was like, oh, we're trying to find her, and she's asking people if they've seen her sister. But at the same time, they're also saying it's more of like a farewell, like retracing the steps to like sort of get some closure kind of thing. But it always feels like the main girl's always like, no, we're trying to find her. She's out here somewhere. She went missing somewhere down this road. We're going to find her, which I guess is also kind of taken from the games, like technically in like a roundabout way, because the game did start with someone losing a sibling. And then the person like being and it does a time jump of a year, so maybe that's why it's a year time jump, because they wanted to have that element of the game, I guess. But otherwise, I don't know.
And then also like you're saying, like with it's weird how sometimes it takes itself very seriously and sometimes it's trying to play stuff for like comedic effect, and then it's similar to with the characters too, because like sometimes they'll have these kind of like one-liners or like little jokes that they try to make about what's going on, but then it just doesn't seem to like fit with how they're acting like the rest of the time, which is like trying to be like more serious and whatnot. So it is a weird tone that it's going for. And then it's one of those situations too where I found like all the friends, not saying that they're like great characters, but like most of the friends were a lot more interesting and had like more intriguing personalities than the main character, who is just that typical like dour, dealing with grief, kind of main character. That
I would say that about the main two. I would say both her and like her love interest, or the guy who was her love interest, who still clearly is into her. I think they're both dull as dishwater. I don't think the other ones are that much more interesting, but those two are especially dull.
Yeah, like the other ones are more a bit tropey, but at least there's something to kind of like cling on to. Like with the tropes, it's like, okay, well at least they instantly have like some type of quirk or personality, even if it is like a little cliche or whatever, but it immediately makes them much more interesting than the main two.
I thought I got more Vulcan vibes from them.
Oh, okay. Sure.
You said there's something Klingon too about them.
Oh, okay, I gotcha.
Klingons.
You don't know a Star Trek guy. I'm not gonna.
Yeah, but like two people out there thought that was really funny. Okay.
How dare you bring Star Trek up right after May the 4th? My God.
Stupid Star Wars. I had to watch Revenge of the Sith recently, Tim, so I'm not giving any leniency to Star Wars. Trash. Absolute trash. Anyway. Yeah, I think tone's a big problem. Character, just the characters being likable and interesting is also a problem. They kind of fall into this weird no man's land territory that we've talked about this before from time to time with modern movies, where they don't want to commit to just having fun archetypes, and they're not good enough written to be like really like layered characters that are engaging in like a smart way. They're kind of in this middle territory where they're too dull to be the fun archetypes, and they're not smartly written enough to actually be engaging. So you end up with this drab middle kind of ground where they're just kind of a blank slate. And
pretty much,
it makes them really boring. And I think having more likable characters to root for, or not even root for, but just enjoy, like reacting and being killed and whatnot, might have went a long way. But certainly for me, even if you weren't going to have that, I think more defined rules would have done a lot to me. Because by the time it starts to get to like, like the history of where this house is, and other things that they start to see and whatnot, I like that's where it just completely. I was like, okay, this is like any like over the top backstory to any supernatural movie where you're just going to start throwing crap at everything, and I just I'm just not that excited by any of it.
And as far as like the horror stuff goes, like there's just a lot of stuff where like I don't know, it doesn't feel like gory or bloody enough. Like I don't know, I didn't particularly find the kills like super memorable. Like, and again, in a movie where the premise is like these characters are gonna get killed like over and over again. Yeah, it's probably been about maybe like a little less than a week or so since I saw it, and like or maybe it has been about a little over a week. But like, yeah, I'm like, other than like a few things here and there, I'm trying to like remember what like all the kills were, and yeah, then there's some whatever like typical like horror CGI and all the kind of modern like stuff you can ding against it.
Yeah, I mean,
But yeah,
it comes down to it's not as bad as something like Imaginary, but it's still
of course, yeah,
extremely middling at best.
yeah, like something like Imaginary, like yeah, we were fuming at having to watch it, and like I wouldn't say I left the theater like mad, like I wasn't like, oh boy, that sucked, like screw that movie or whatever, but I just left kind of being like, oh, that was it, all right.
Yeah, I was just
Whatever.
thoroughly underwhelmed. I just did not give a shit about anything I'd just seen. So, yeah, there you go. So I guess we're ready to start talking about spoilers. I guess actually a couple of things before we get into spoilers. I have two things to bring up. One's just a silly little thing. There's like a fancy PlayStation Productions logo now that played at the start of this, and it was really weird seeing like Nathan Drake and like Ratchet and Clank and like just all these other PlayStation characters in this little intro, and I'm like, well, that's weird. Okay, but sure, they're going to start making more movies. I guess they're going to start putting this at the front of them now. So
Like, was this a PlayStation exclusive or?
yeah, until that was, yeah.
Oh, okay.
What's really weird is Sony are making the Legend of Zelda movie, but I presume they won't put the PlayStation logo at the start of that. Yeah, they're the Sony, the movie studio, are making the Legend of Zelda movie. So yeah, that was one thing. I just wanted to mention the opening PlayStation intro thing. The other thing, and this really bugged me, right? See if you've got your characters in a time loop movie of some kind, do not have them bring up Groundhog Day, right? Like,
Yeah.
the awkward dialogue, like, and if you're going to do it, because the way Happy Death Day did it, I think was fine, because Happy Death Day sort of brought it up as like a little joke at the very, very end, and it was just played for a little laugh after the movie was already over. But if you're going to, like, this movie brings it up when they start to, like, realize they're in a loop, and someone's like, oh, it's just like that one movie, and then another character goes, there's been tons of movies about that. And I'm like, guys, like this is the same thing of like in Abigail when like vampires like pop up as a real thing, and they all start just like naming movies that they've seen with vampires in it, and like I'm just like, it's too, I don't know. At a certain point, you're hurting your movie by only being able to reference like the famous one or two movies that have already done a similar premise. I think it's better if the characters have never heard of Groundhog Day or similar movies. I think it's better if they just sort of tackle it from the get-go as if it's a brand new concept to them and just go from there, because having them awkwardly sort of like bring it up, because it feels very like obligatory, like, oh, the audience are going to like expect them to bring this up, or we have to just sort of, because it almost feels like they don't want to do it, but they're like, oh, we have to do it. We have to address that this is a Groundhog Day scenario, or the audience won't buy into it. And I'm like, no, it's just awkward. It's just clunky, and it just feels like you're, I don't know, like trying to say, hey, yeah, it's like that, but hey, it's a whole subgenre now. We don't have to explain it. Just roll with it. Yeah. And you can do that by just not bringing it up.
Yeah, also, like, don't tell me that your movie sucks. Like, they're basically telling you, like, oh, this movie's unoriginal. Like, they'll be like, yeah, a bunch of movies have done that, and it's, like, tired and formulaic now. It's like, all right, yeah, maybe don't tell us that.
Which is especially annoying, given the fact that it's not even that type of movie, really. Because this is, because what does Groundhog Day, Edge of Tomorrow, Happy Death Day, et al, what do they all have in common? They all have this, the idea is that the pattern of events until the main character changes them is the same every day, right? Because they all have that bit where like they walk in town, or the wake up from the dorm room, or whatever it is that starts the story, and you see all the same things play out until the main character starts like manipulating it to do different things. This movie doesn't do that. Whenever they reset, they're just back standing in the house, and they're all like, whoa, we just died. Like, Nothing plays out the same. It's not like the killer comes for them the exact same way as the previous time. That may have been more interesting, actually, because they could start to like plan around it, and it would almost be like the video game where you're just memorizing button presses.
Well, like, if you have to reference something, like, I mean, maybe this would have been like a little cheesy or whatever, but instead of saying Groundhog Day, why not have someone be like, oh, you mean like a video game where like when you die you get to redo or something? You know, like,
nah, that's terrible. That's just as bad.
Well, I'm saying it's more apt than having to, force this pop culture thing.
I mean, okay, sure. I admit that it's more relevant. I don't know if I like it anymore though.
Yeah. But yeah, I was talking to a friend about it, and it was kind of annoying because I was explaining like, oh man, it has this really good premise, and they kind of squandered it. And then my friend was like, well, it's not really that original. They're just doing like Happy Death Day, and I'm like, no, like that's different because I don't consider this like you're saying like a specific time loop movie because it's something different every time. Like when it's like Happy Death Day, it's like it's like the same killer and like the same event and stuff, and then like you're saying you manipulated it and then see how it changes each day or whatever. Like here it's like something different every time, or at least what you want with the premise is something different every time. So like like I want the movie where it's like, okay, 1 minute it's like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and then you die, and then the next minute it's like Evil Dead and then you die, and then it's like Night of Living Dead or something like that.
It should feel almost more like Cabin in the Woods without the meta part, but like the idea that you're going through the endless like rotation of all the things that it could be coming after you.
And I kind of get the feeling like that's what this movie wanted to be, but is so such a far cry from that movie.
Aye. Anyway, spoilers, everyone. Spoilers for Until Dawn, or at least what we can remember about it anyway.
I will say, like, I think you're saying before, like, you're surprised by some things. Like, a big shock to me was, like, when when it ended and the credits came on and it said, written by Gary Dauberman. I was like, oh, of course this is a Dauberman movie.
I saw
like,
that, I was like, no wonder
it has
shit.
a stink.
if anything is surprising, it's not worse with his name attached to the script. Actually, be honest, Tim. If you knew Gary Dauberman had written this, would you wait to see it?
I probably would have still been intrigued, but I would have had to have thought about it a lot more.
Yes. And just for people who don't know, I'm just pulling up Gary Dauberman to give you a comprehensive list of what he's done. So he did, starting with newest and working back, just because that's how it's written, Until Dawn, last year's Salem's Lot remake, or what do you call it? The Nun 2, well, technically it was only based on characters, so technically not. I'll discredit that one. It Chapter 2.
Ugh.
Annabelle Comes Home. It's a bit better. The Nun. It. Annabelle Creation. Wolves at the Door. Oh, I've not even heard of that one. Annabelle.
I don't remember. Ugh.
Swamp Devil. Okay, we're into TV movies now. That
sounds bad.
Yeah, we've never heard of these. Basically, his career properly started with Annabelle. His very first credit is a movie, the direct-to-video movie called Blood Monkey. Just wanted to mention that. But go on.
Oh, that sounds kind of good. I mean, he's just like the most like generic. I mean, admittedly, like I don't think all those movies are like horrible. Like, Annabelle Comes Home was kind of fun, and like, I like the first It movie to an extent, but I assume most of the stuff that's good in that is from the original like director. Before what's their face took over. But yeah, just a lot of the stuff he does is just very bland and boring, typical generic horror crap. It's always like deflating when you see his name. Like it's like, oh, they're doing like a new Salem's Lot movie. That could be really cool. Written directed by Gary Dauberman. And then it's like she's just like a balloon letting out air as you like sink to the floor.
Yeah, he's just a name that's not. The thing is, though, is you don't tend to like notice who's written a movie for the most part, unless it's something they really want to promote, or it's also the director. So it's very easy to just not know. And I didn't know. I saw his name at the end of this and went, "Oh shit, no wonder." So, rough times.
It was him and one other person. I think it was like Blair Butler or something. Which I could be wrong, but I want to say like. did he used to do stuff at like IGN or something? Like I want to say he's like somehow connected to video games in some way.
I have no idea.
But yeah, the name sounds familiar, but I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking of someone else.
He did Hellfest, which I think we did on the show.
Okay.
I think you're right though, because he's got some weird credits where he's like writer of Xbox at E3. So
okay,
he definitely was in the video game realm in some capacity, because that seems to be what he was doing until he started writing movie scripts for mediocre to bad horror movies, which is just based on the ratings here and the fact that I've seen this one. So it has all the talent going for it, so there's that. Also, I'll mention just now, there's a bunch of missing posters at one point of everyone who's like died here at this like little house, and the director's one of the missing people. I noticed his face.
Oh, that was so much fun.
I just thought I'd bring it up while I remember. The movie opens with a very quick scene of what turns out to be the sister of the main character. And she's like, clawing through some dirt, and then the axe killer's there and he kills her, and that's it. Until Dawn, here's your title. But the real start of the movie is when we're introduced to the main character, Clover. That doesn't even ring a bell. Clover.
I would have remembered that.
No. And she's driving in a car with her friends, Max, who used to be her boyfriend and is clearly still into her, and he's super needy and like wants to be a good boy for her. You've got her best friend Nina, who was in that last Hellraiser movie that came out a couple of years ago. The actress.
Oh right, yeah.
I was wondering if I was just thinking that she looks familiar because she's got a bit of a maybe vibe going, as an Arrested Development.
Sure.
She looks she's got a little bit of that vibe. So similar kind of hair and whatnot. And then you've got Megan, who is the Asian girl who thinks she's a bit of a psychic, although everyone else seems to think that it's not a real thing, and she's just kind of going through a bit of a phase where she's into it for whatever reason. And then the driver of the car is who Nina is currently dating, and that is Abe. So he's not really part of the friend group. He's kind of a new addition, and that's her 5 main characters.
And the joke is that like Nina's always in a relationship, like she's, I guess, quote unquote, like the slutty one or something.
Well, to be fair, it's not phrased as slutty. It's just phrased as she doesn't know how to be alone, so she always just finds a new partner. They kind of joke about, like, Max, I think, like, says some stuff about it because she's giving him shit for other things. Yeah. Honestly, like, is there anything remotely interesting to say about any of these 5 people?
I mean, I do think it's interesting to like introduce one of the characters and be like, oh yeah, she's a psychic. Like, again, the movie doesn't really end up doing much with it, but at least that is something where I'm like, okay, well, that's interesting.
See, what I thought it was going to do, because in the game you find these totem things that give you little visions of the future, and I thought they were going to have a psychic character to like try and give them little like hints of how to survive later, because I thought, that's a way to bring in one of the very, very few mechanics that are actually in the game into the movie in some capacity. But she never actually really uses it for it. Like, the most that ever comes from it is when she first walks into the house, she's like, I'm getting bad vibes from this place. Oh, thanks for that, Counselor Troy. Sorry, Tim, that's another Star Trek reference. I realize you don't get it, but...
And there's like one part where she's like getting possessed, but then, I don't know, it's kind of hard to tell if it's like, okay, is this because of her psychic ability, or is it because like that's like the new monster thing from that time loop or whatever?
Yeah, it's funny how the clown masked killer always seems to come back every single loop, but the possession thing was only that one loop. Funny that. Yeah. Anyway, and then the other main character, kind of, that's introduced here is the guy that's working at the petrol station, the gas station for the Americans, is Peter Stormare, who notably was in the game. He played like a creepy therapist in the game, and we're in spoilers here, so I can say that he kind of ends up being a creepy therapist in this as well by the end. And it's kind of hinted at that he's meant to be the same character, which is weird because in the game he was absolutely just a figment of someone's imagination. But in the movie, they reference it because you see Rami Malek's photograph on his desk, like as like a file, as like a little Easter egg for the games. But
I got that, yeah.
It's kind of a weird thing because, like I said, he was in someone's head in the game. He didn't really exist. But in this movie, he is like someone who's doing experiments on people based on fear.
Yeah, I know that's. Sorry.
No, on you go. I was making just audible noises of disbelief. On you go.
Yeah, I mean that was like one thing that I could not figure out was like, okay, so is this just like a normal guy that's in like this weird like paranormal place, or is he a part of the place? Is he someone that was real and then like you know what I mean? Like I don't know. I couldn't wrap my head around it, and it again, like we kind of said before, it wouldn't have been that big a deal if they weren't trying to like allude to stuff. But then once you actually have him at the end with like an office and paperwork, and you know he could be killed and stuff, I'm like, okay, well now you're bringing up too many questions that like I am trying to figure out in my head.
Honestly, Tim, it never even once crossed my mind that he was remotely supernatural or anything like that. I think because they do the whole thing where the entire town got buried because of a mine collapse or something, and that caused whatever this supernatural thing is. I think he just discovered what was happening because he was close to it and he was doing experiments on people to see what was happening to them, and he's just continually luring people out to this place so that he can keep analyzing what happens to people and see how they go. I think he's just a mad scientist. I think that's all it comes down to. He's just exploiting this supernatural thing that's there.
But then I guess my question with that is like, why are the things not like going after him, or like why can he, you know, I guess traverse this landscape seemingly?
There's one rule that they do establish, Tim, and that is the only people who
survive till dawn, or sorry. No.
I mean that is a rule, okay. But like no. Yeah. The only people affected by this are the people who write their name in the logbook, like in the little like, the hotel visitors book. That seems to trigger it. So he presumably has just never went in there and now, admittedly, I know you're going to tell me this in a second, is that only one person in the group does that, but the whole group gets affected. I can't explain that because the supernatural forces know they're a party. They know it's a party of 5. They're like, table for 5 at the horror buffet. Here you go.
So did they ever establish that is specifically what triggers everything? Because I just assumed that, like, basically entering the house was what kind of triggers it, and then her writing her name was just like a starting point or whatever for the night. But I don't know. I
mean, they don't like go out of their way to spell it out, but it just the vibe I got from the way it kind of emphasized that she was putting her name in there, and the fact that the loop starts with that every time, made it feel like that was the trigger point. Like, okay, you've accepted admittance into whatever this is, even though you didn't know you were doing it. Which is actually, honestly, that was something that, like, I don't get me wrong, it would be a stretch in a realistic sense to assume that writing your name in a book would have any effect whatsoever. But part of me was thinking, you see the dead sister's name in this book 13 times. Why are you putting your name in there? It just seems like you're asking for trouble. You know?
Yeah. No, yeah, it's very weird. I mean, whatever's going on, it's obviously very sloppily told. And yeah, I mean, if he is just a guy, like, again, it still feels weird to me that he, like, can so comfortably kind of, you know, just wander around, you know, these places. Because he's obviously still affected by it because, I mean, again, we're in spoilers, so, like, you know, we know that he can die from like the water and stuff, which presumably I would think means the other things can affect him.
Too, we'll go back and talk about the water. That's a whole thing to talk about. I
mean, we don't have to get into it. Like, I mean, because we'll catch up to it later. Like, we can go back to.
No, we can talk about the water. So, all right. So after they've already looped a few times, right, and they realize that they're going to keep getting killed and they have to survive till dawn. Their plan is quite smart, right? The smartest thing these characters do is they just barricade themselves in the bathroom and think, we'll just wait in here. We'll just not play the game. We'll just like hide from everything, and survive until sun comes up. Easy enough, right? But then it does. This is where it almost feels like it wants to be a fun movie, because basically they drink some water out of the sink because they're thirsty, and one by one they all blow up. Right? They just go pop like a balloon, and it's like, it's meant to be funny. Right? It's meant to be like a really dark humor Final Destination cartoon explosion. And I'm like, okay, this feels tonally weird because it just doesn't fit anything else that we've had so far. And it's not like it is then silly from then on. It kind of goes back to being serious at points. But, right, so it's like, okay, the water out the tap did this. It made them explode. What I didn't get, though, is that later on, before we get to the doctor, there's a moment where water drips in someone's mouth that's just like coming in. It's like the rainwater's coming in from the roof or something. And it makes them explode?
Yeah, it's because the ex-boyfriend and the main character, or whatever, they have some type of revelation, and then she's like, "Okay, we got to start over again. So like, kill me." And he's like, "I don't want to kill you." It's like, "You have to." And then he kills her, and then he's like, "Well, crap, I have to die now." And then he sees like some water dripping. He's like, "All right, I guess I'll just do this," and he drinks it and explodes.
Yeah. So that's just my immediate problem with this. Is I'm like, wait, you're telling me that any water at all that exists in this bubble that we're in is explosive to the human being? That you're telling me that any water from any source is going to do this? That felt really weird to me, just on its own merits. So when they use this at the end of the movie, when the main character basically, as the villain, as Dr. Hill, Peter Stormare's character, as he's monologuing and walking around, he's been drinking like coffee out of a mug, and he places the mug down. There's a drip coming from the ceiling, and she like just moves the mug over a bit so that it'll drip into the mug, and she moves it back, and then he picks it up and takes a drink, and he starts to convulse, and he eventually pops. I'm just kind of like, this just feels like such a, I don't know, like a tenuous thing. Like it's almost like they're kind of doing what I want in a weird way, but in a really dumb way. Like they've set something up, they reestablished it, and they paid it off. But this thing that they've set up is so weird and random. And this goes back to, I guess, this idea that a lot of things don't necessarily maintain from the previous loops, but a few things do always seem to come back. It's just, I don't know, the water being explosive like every single loop, it just feels really weird to, and from any source at that, right? Because this is water dripping through the ceiling. This is like rainwater, so the rainwater will make them explode. So when it's raining outside, if they happen to just let a little bit of it go in their mouth, is that it? Is that them? Are they going to pop?
And I mean, and the movie starts with them like trapped in the rain. Like, I mean, I guess technically it's kind of like a barrier between them and when they get to the house or whatever. But like, you figure they would have been like pretty soaked at that point. I don't know if you have to ingest it directly into the mouth, but you think maybe like a little bit of rainwater could have gotten in or something.
In fact, every time the loop resets, the main character's standing out in the rain. That's where she is at the point of loop. She's out in the rain, Max is behind her, and he kind of taps her on the shoulder. That's how the loop starts every time for them, when the other girl's signing her name in the book. So, yeah, I thought that was weird.
I'll say, yeah, I didn't really like it. Like, I didn't think it was that funny. I think you could have totally done something with the water, but maybe play it more like an actual horror thing where, yeah, maybe it's just like, it's like an infectious disease or something, and maybe it could do like some like gross body stuff, but like the explosion just felt like it was going like too much for a laugh. And then it's not the movie's fault or whatever, but it reminded me like way too much of the explosion death in the monkey, like that we just saw like a few months ago. That I'm like, all right, I feel like another movie already did this like better. And then yeah, it would have been more acceptable if, again, they were doing more like jokey, funny stuff, and like if this was like.
I think that the problem, Tim, is that this to me like starts you on a path in theory where it's about, okay, like Final Destination, death is a petty bitch who is going to get to us any way it can, so we have to outsmart it. But I feel like as soon as we loop again, it's just kind of, they're just kind of like, well, what do we do now? Oh, I don't know. Like it doesn't lead to them. Like if it became this weird game of cat and mouse between the ID of them versus death itself, that would be something. But it feels like the very next time it loops, it's just back to, well, there's a possessed person, or there's a masked killer. I don't know. It felt like, I guess it all comes back to it. It just tonally felt like it was out of a different movie. It did not feel like it fit this movie at all.
Yeah, and you know the people that made it like loved it. Otherwise, they wouldn't have brought it back. Like so many times.
Oh sure. Well, I mean, it's actually so important to the plot because it's how they take down the bad guy at the end, right? So it's actually essential for the movie. So they really love the concept of it. I just think that suggests to me that they're going. It's like, okay, we have to try and find loopholes of ways that they can't get to us from any means. And because I almost expect a montage of like them trying to avoid like being in a position where they could be killed, only for the powers that be inside this like death loop, like somehow getting to them. Because if it's going to be that cheap where even just the water can kill them, then why can't a fire just start? Randomly. Why can't this just happen randomly? It feels.
That's true.
I don't know. It feels cheap. It feels cheap. And that would be fine if the whole point was, oh, death's cheap, so we have to keep trying to like outwit it in a game of chess. That there could be fun there. That's effectively what Final Destination is, I guess. But I don't think this was supposed to feel like Final Destination though. I went into this thinking, oh, each time there's a loop, there's going to be like a different horror movie, effectively.
Yeah, no, I mean that's what I thought too, and then it just feels like it kind of, I guess it kind of abandons that to like pursue a plot, which. Yeah, it's just like the opposite of what I wanted.
Yeah, and I think a smarter script would have found a way to do a plot whilst adhering to this idea that it's in parts because each part's a different type of movie. And then the fact that after a couple of loops, they then realize, oh, it's only been 4 loops, and then someone says, no, my name's down here like 12 times. And I'm like, wait, why all of a sudden have you forgotten like 7 days? It doesn't make any sense why you would have done that already.
They introduce a lot of stuff that ends up being nothing. So yeah, because they mentioned something about like, oh, no one in the book, because they kind of start looking at the book and seeing like how many times people have written their names, which I mean, if you loop back around, wouldn't you just be looping to when you're first putting your name? Like you wouldn't be putting your name again, right? Whatever. But like they say something.
I think that's just a supernatural thing because they established right at the start that the name goes down a second time on the second loop and so on and so on. Like
it's a magic guest book.
Yeah, and there is like a time factor because the one thing we've not mentioned yet here is that everyone going through this is gradually becoming a Wendigo.
Well, I think there's like a couple of things that they bring up. So we're gonna get to that, but like first they mentioned something where it's like, oh, like no one in the book has like gone past like 12 days or whatever, because they see like the names have been written down like this many times, which is an interesting thing to bring up, and then that kind of gives it a nice little like time factor to it. But then, like you said, they just totally ignore that because at one point they're just like, oh wait, it's been way more days than we realized. It's actually been like 26 or whatever. And it's like,
oh,
okay,
no.
Then...
To be fair, no, it wasn't over the amount they said that was in the book. They basically said, oh, we're on the last day then, because no one survived past day 13. It wasn't past that number.
Okay, I remember as being like more than that, but all right, fair enough. But then, they also have the other thing, like you're saying, like, they're slowly turning into Wendigos. And I feel like they also kind of like bring up to like the fact that like they feel kind of like hurt or something. Like when the time loop starts again, it's like the more times they die or whatever, like it does more toll on the body, which I don't know if that's just part of the Wendigo transformation or if it's like, oh yeah, the more times you die, like the harder it is going to be on your body, which I think is an interesting idea, but nothing really happens with that.
I mean, I felt like after the first time they all died, it seemed like some of them had like bruises where they died. Like, so if they got stabbed in the face, there was a big bruise in the face, so on and so on. Not the exact injury, but like the area that was affected, it would be like hurt that next day. But it seemed like when they looked again, that original death injury was gone. So it was, I thought maybe that's something they could have played with, is that every time you come back, however you died the previous time gave you like a handicap on the next run, where like, oh, if you get your leg cut off, you've got a limp the next day, and you can't run as fast or something like that. I don't know.
Again, like these are stuff that I'm like, oh, I would like to explore this, but it's just kind of all abandoned. And then, I mean, this. I'm kind of jumping around here, but I just thought this was kind of funny. Where at one point it seems like they're making Abe out to be kind of like a, antagonistic, like he's gonna become like a threat or something, because he, they kind of get to a point where it's like, oh, like we might be able to survive if we sacrifice Clover or whatever, because that seems to be who the town or whatever is, I guess, wants, or who the doctor wants or whatever. And it seems like, Abe's kind of like, oh, like, maybe we should explore this, or like think about it, or try to survive or whatever. And then they're like, oh no, like screw you. And then what's her face, Nina, like kills him. But then it's kind of like not really like brought up again. It's just kind of like, oh, I learned my lesson. I guess I'm like with you guys now.
Bygones be bygones.
Yeah. But it's like, oh no, like you could have like had him like set up as like another threat that, could be interesting. You could do something with, or maybe he's trying to work with the knight or whatever. But then it's just like, oh no, this is like another idea that we're kind of just dropping.
Yeah. Not only does it just drop it, the idea that any of them even like kind of forgive him is absurd. Not because he was floating the idea, because there is times where he's kind of antagonistic, where he just wants to like, let's just drive away. Like, I know we're leaving some of them behind, but if we go get help, then we can come back and help them. And that's actually when we get a cool tease that the movie never comes back to, which really annoyed me, because like him and Nina try and drive away, and there's like a kaiju size thing acting like a barrier at the edge of the road so they can't get out, and you just sort of see it flashing the lightning. I was like, oh, that'll be cool when that comes back and something happens. No, never does.
The same thing.
Yeah, never comes up again. But yeah, like you say, there's a whole bit where it's suggested in one of the tapes they find, because they find like a bunch of like old research tapes from like the doctor, right? And they hear that, one must die. And he starts thinking, okay, why don't we let Clover die? She already tried to do it twice in the last year. And it's like, that is the most evil possible thing that someone could say. Is like, oh, she wanted to do that anyway, so you may as well just let her have what she wants and we can all live. And I'm like, the idea that everyone else doesn't, because everyone makes it at the end, right? The thing with this premise is we get to see them all die a bunch of times, but they can all survive at the end because of the type of movie it is. And I'm like, the idea that everyone doesn't just remember that he said that and is like never going to like treat him like a human being ever again. It's just like, no, like how could you possibly talk to him like a decent human being again after he said that?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just wild to me. Plus, again, it brought the tone down, right? Because it's like, okay, now it's getting serious, and they're talking about really serious things.
And this was something, not this particular scene, but like, I guess this kind of starts us down that road where the movie slowly starts to become like about grief, and the doctor even says like at the end, like, oh, like your grief like draws the spirits here, or like some bullshit like that. I'm like, god damn it, just like another movie where we're dealing with all like this grief and trauma and stuff, when again, like I just want to see like a fun, stupid, like cheesy movie where people just keep dying over and over again.
I'll say again, every time you bring this up, I say it, it's perfectly fine when it's well written. The problem isn't that they're doing a character that's like using it as the horror as a metaphor for their trauma. There's tons of good movies that have done that. The problem is that it's so like poorly written that it's just like, I can see that, like I could see you making a fun B movie here if you just weren't so dour, but that's all I get from this is dour, because the character is like, I'm not rooting for her. I don't care about her stupid sister who's dead. I don't care about her getting over her crap. Especially since like these characters, like there's very like honestly the one girl like being into like psychic stuff is I mean, or arguably even Nina, the idea that she is like kind of like codependent and always needs to have a partner, whether it's a boyfriend or girlfriend, like that is more fleshed out than the main characters get, because the main characters only care about the thing that's related to the main plot, which is, oh, my sister's missing or dead, I have to find her, I'm very sad about it, and that's it. There's never anything else. There's never like any real attempt to like make us really connect with that, let us see how much the other two girls really care about her. I mean, we know about how much Max cares about her, I guess, because he's like, clearly in love with her and is constantly asking how she is.
Every other character is constantly pulling him aside and saying, this isn't gonna like make her fall in love with you again and stuff. It's like, all right, we get it.
Yeah, again, it's this weird thing where like they succeed in making him kind of annoying with how much he's trying. It's like, it shouldn't be annoying. It should not be frustrating watching him try to be nice to someone, but it kind of is. It feels like there's always this needy motive behind it, and it just makes him a little bit unlikable to me.
Yeah, I agree.
And then, the third act, which honestly is mostly a blur, but I vaguely remember, like, so actually, first detail, we find out this town all gets swallowed down, like, in this mining disaster however many years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
And at one point when they get out of the basement and they find a bunch of stuff, they say, why is there windows down here that are looking at the underground? And then later on, we find out that it's because when the town all sank, this basement area is actually the first floor. And they're saying that's why there's a front door looking thing there. But then I go, wait a minute then. What about the front door you came in? Why is there a front door up there? If that's meant to be the upper floor of the house, then why is there a very clear front door with a porch up there? Is that just it's supernatural bullshit so we don't have to explain shit?
I mean, I guess that could be like some type of second floor balcony or something that just perfectly like synced to the ground. But then also, I mean, all that stuff though feels like stuff that would be in the foyer, like not.
Oh yeah.
In the entrance, not in a. I don't know. Again, it's like you can't really think about it too much.
It feels like they wanted to have like this element to it where it's like, oh wow, like this basement was actually the first floor and the house sank, and that explains the windows down here, but it doesn't really explain why everything upstairs where the entrance is still feels like the entrance of a house. So yeah, it feels like, oh, we wanted to have this, but we also didn't really care enough to actually make all of it work. Like, see if they actually had like a weird bit when they arrived and going, oh, this is a weird door to the house or something, or if it looked a little bit off, or it looked like, I don't know, but it doesn't, and if it is supernatural, if it is just a case, well, the supernatural element here that's doing everything changed the house, then why wouldn't it also change like the lower floor to look like a basement? If it was just changing stuff, then why not change that too?
Yeah.
Consistency.
I don't know.
Consistency in things that make logical sense.
I mean, it's just not a very well thought out script. I mean, it just seems like, they thought of ideas that like tickled their fancy and they're like, oh, this is a cool thing to throw in, but they don't actually like think about how that affects the rest of the stuff that's happening in there.
The story of the movie gets to the point where the town that was buried kind of reappears outside over the loops. So eventually the rest of the town's there, and I thought, oh, maybe they're going to go at the crematorium, because they mentioned that, or the sanatorium, sorry. Mm-hmm. They mentioned that at one point, and that was an area in the game, so I thought maybe they're going to do some stuff that they had there. But all it really amounts to is that the main character, Clover, goes across the street and sees like a crazy old woman.
Oh, sorry, like she gets like pulled from like
a horse, yes.
Like drags her, like which and I want to say that this was only the second night, either like second or third. It was like pretty early on, but like I was still getting pretty excited at this point because I was like, okay, here we go. Like this is something that's completely different than the other nights, and so it's interesting. And then yeah, like she gets sucked into this witch house, um, and there's like this old lady there that at first is just kind of like frozen still, and then she comes to life, and then she I think has some what do you call it, like lines of dialogue. She explains a few things, and then she like has her like breathing mask or whatever that she puts over her, and then Clover kind of becomes possessed because she says something like, "Oh, I think she says like survive the night or become the night or whatever." Um, but then like I think Clover just dies, and then she's okay when she like comes back. So it's like, oh, I guess even if you do get possessed or taken over or whatever, I guess you're fine as long as you loop again.
Well, which makes sense to me. The loop should reset everything, but I think my problem with that is it's like, okay, survive the night or become the night, and to me, what that said was, because this is before they started to really like reveal the Wendigo stuff. Like, I think we saw one character, I think Megan, the psychic girl, I think she was maybe starting to have like some like fangs grow in. But I was thinking, everyone who attacks them in this loop is someone who was a victim of the loop. So everyone who didn't make it out, one became the clown killer, one became, the werewolf or whatever. Like, they all turn into something. But then later on, no, it's no, they're all just turning into the exact same thing. They're all turning into Wendigos. That's what happens to everyone who gets trapped in this loop. And there are scenes where they get attacked by a group of Wendigos. But it's like, okay, but so what are the other things then? What the clown killer and the kaiju looking like ogre thing, the witch. Where are all these other things coming from if everyone's turned into a Wendigo? Why isn't it all just Wendigos all the time? And I feel like, again, this is them try to do a thing from the game, because the game tried to convince you that there was a killer with a clown mask, and that's a bit of a red herring. Not to get too spoilery, but it's kind of a red herring. It's actually about Wendigos. And I feel like the movie tries to do this as well. It's about all these crazy things happening. No, it's Wendigos. It's always Wendigos. So yeah, the characters like open the door in the basement, which used to be the first floor, and like go through tunnels and shit. I don't know. The third act's kind of a blur, if I'm honest. I don't really remember a lot what happened.
Just one thing I want to say, like obviously, as horror people, like we know what Wendigos are, but I don't think they're like commonplace enough that I don't know, you can just kind of keep dropping it in the movie and like expect people to just be like, oh yeah, Wendigos, yeah, I know. Like that's that makes sense to me, because I maybe I'm forgetting something, but I don't think they really explain too much of like what it is.
I don't think they do. No,
and I'm not even sure if like what it is even really accurate to Wendigo lore. But yeah, I guess like going into the third act, we have a lot of the characters are like split up through most of the movie, which is another thing that I don't know. I mean, I guess it's fine, but like sometimes I'm just kind of like, oh, like why don't you stick together more or whatever. But yeah, as we're kind of like gearing towards the end, like Clover is kind of going off to confront like the therapist. Megan is just missing.
Okay, she's been kidnapped by the therapist. That's what it turns out to be. Is that somehow, because that's the thing, she's just missing for a bit, and then someone says, "Where's Megan?" And they're all like, "Yeah, where is Megan?" And this was really distracting that they kept saying Megan, because I got the trailer for Megan 2 before this movie started. So every single time they said Megan, all I could hear in my head was, "Hang on to your vaginas," because that was a line in the Megan 2 trailer.
Oh boy, that'll be exciting.
It's not even a horror. I said in the Discord that movie is not a horror movie anymore. The first one was barely a horror movie. The second one's just going full nonsense. And someone said technically it should be on Ace and not Screams. And I said, you know what? Technically you're right, but we're going to do it on Screams because it's Megan 2.
A precedent has been set. Like, I mean, yeah, it's. I mean, I'm not complaining because I'm intrigued. I want to see it. And I had no idea what it was about going in, and that seeing that trailer at the movies was like the first time I had seen it. I
Yeah,
was
me
kind of
too.
like, holy shit, like
I mean, I got it both times, but it was when I saw Sinners that I got it for the first time, and that I was like just gobsmacked at the what it was. I was like, this is what Megan
yeah.
2 is. Anyway,
Yeah, I mean, again, it could be like awful, but I'm like, well, at least they're going for something. But whatever. Back to Until Dawn. Yeah, then a lot of this end is just them like racing through the tunnels, and although the Wendigos coming after them. At some point she is being chased by a Wendigo that she realizes is her sister, and I will give the movie a little bit of credit. I do like that she doesn't end up like saving her sister. Like I feel like other movies might have had some type of happy ending where it's like, she can somehow transform her back or whatever, and they all leave happily ever after. But I kind of like that this movie was a little bit like, no, like she's not really gonna try to like save her or whatever. Like she's like understands that she has to like let go. So I was like, that's
yeah.
something, I guess.
And I mean, not that the rest of what you just said, but the idea that the sibling turned into a Wendigo was also from the game.
Cool. And then they have like the big showdown with like the therapist and stuff. And then
so
at
exciting.
this point, I mean, there really isn't. There really isn't much more. And I guess like all he was really, I don't even know exactly what he's interested. I guess just like in everything about this place, which I mean, I guess it is a very interesting place to be fair.
He's studying fear or something. I don't know. He's got a bit of fear. I like honestly, the third act is such a blur. I was so bored and out of it by this point. And it's not like I was like, I was in the theater. I wasn't asleep or anything. I wasn't looking at a screen. I was looking at the movie. I was paying attention, but I was so bored by this point that you go into kind of that fugue state where you're like, I'm just watching a movie and waiting for it to end, and I'm not really engaging with anything that it's doing. And yeah, by the time all this happens, the sun's starting to come up, and they've survived. They've technically made it. Great. Everyone's made it out. They drive off. The end.
And like you said, there's that little thing where the therapist or whatever, you see the files on his table, and they have, I think it's like Rami Malek's picture from the original game or whatever.
Yes, Josh was the character, if I recall correctly.
Of course. And I think like they show the cabin or something, so it's like but then that's also weird. Wait, so does that mean that
in fact,
that cabin is in this town, or is it like different towns have different?
Well, it's not even just that you see like a photograph. You actually see some of the security cameras, like the
that's it. Yeah,
the TVs. Yeah. You see multiple rooms from the game on the cameras.
That's right.
Almost like that was starting up after this movie. But yeah, it doesn't really make any sense, just in the sense that, like, because the game never went into this weird territory where, like, something supernatural's, like, doing different things up here or anything like that. And yeah, I don't know. It just felt like a bunch of Easter eggs for the sake of Easter eggs, because people who played the game will lap them up, presumably.
I wonder if this game, like, does have, like, a big fan base. Like, I'm assuming there's people that like it, but, like, is it, like, a ravenous...
It kind of does. I think people are into it. Honestly, I think the biggest negative to the game, well, there's two big negatives to the game. One is that it's barely a video game. It's walk around and just mostly watch cutscenes, which I find really boring. But I think the other big problem for a lot of people with the game, or at least a big problem for me, is I actually watch a lot of horror movies. So, like, what the game's doing is not that impressive or interesting. Like, I've seen better movies with characters at a cabin in the snow. I've seen better movies with monsters. I've seen better movies. Like, I don't know, like, nothing about it I think is actually that good. I feel like for people who have not experienced that much horror, it might seem a lot more like fun or wacky and like, oh, this is fun and thrilling. But for me, I was just kind of annoyed at just how kind of like red herring the plot was, and
I mean, I don't remember it well enough, but I remember liking it at the time, but I'm guessing it was maybe the novelty of it, because I there's some stuff that maybe is a little similar, but it felt like that was the first time they were trying like really hard to make like like a movie, and it had like big names and stuff in it. So I don't know, maybe I was just caught up in that because yeah, every similar game I've tried to play since I've just found so boring. And
Yeah, no, there was
yeah,
definitely a comparison point from before though. It was like Heavy Rain or
okay, yeah,
Beyond Two Souls
the
or Fahrenheit.
yeah the I don't know. Would you count like the Telltale games, kind of?
Yeah, I mean they're more visual novel because they're
Hmm.
less exploration, I guess. But like, yeah, they're definitely closer to that than any other type of game.
Because I feel like I would much rather like take those games. Like again, it's been a while since I played those, but I remember quite liking the Walking Dead games and stuff. And that's something that I would maybe be more willing to revisit than this.
Nah. I even like those games. Again, I need more video game in my video game. Like I just
Mhm.
doing nothing but dialogue choices is a little bit dull to me. But and with that said, though, like like if this movie was campy, this movie should be either a little bit cheesy or a little bit campy, have a lighthearted tone, and I could see it becoming something fun where it's just being inventive with all the different things it can do. But instead, it's a dour modern supernatural style movie where the characters are bland and they, try and take it too seriously most of the time. Although bizarrely, except one or two specific scenes where they try and do something silly, but it just feels off because it doesn't match anything else. So, nah, it's a shame. It's a shame, but
Yeah.
yeah, I regret spending a penny on it, honestly. But here we are.
I mean,
So
we would have had to have done it eventually anyway, but
true, but for a fraction of the
I
cost.
at least this way though, I like going to the movie theaters. This movie theater is interesting because like the screen's not really good, but it has like really like overly comfortable seats. Like the seats are huge and like they like recline and they're I don't know, I guess maybe they're trying to make up for the like screens kind of sucking. But yeah, I like going to the theater and I like getting like my little snacks and I don't know, maybe that kind of helps watching these bad movies a little bit. Just the chance for me to get out of the house and enjoy my little cookie dough bites or whatever I get.
All right, okay. I don't. We don't need this little justification for every bad movie we go see. So,
And yes, of course, I shelled out and I bought the Until Dawn popcorn box and the and everything else they had there.
all right. That's. Can we finish this? Scene of the movie, Tim.
Actually, this is funny because I would say this is a scene we actually haven't talked about. But there's a scene like when they realize like, oh, it's been longer than we thought or whatever, and like the one guy is like, oh, actually, I've been recording everything on my phone. They're like, what?
Oh,
So
yeah. Yeah, that's. I mean, I forgot about this, but this is just further exemplifying why I hated. Like they've got no memory of like the last 6 loops
yeah.
for some reason. All of a sudden, but yeah, go on.
So yeah, I mean the start of it is stupid. I agree, but I did enjoy when they're watching the stuff on the phone, and then it's kind of giving you a preview of the movie I wanted, where they're just showing like these little clips of like stuff they recorded that's like all different like supernatural stuff going on.
Actually, can I guess what you're going to say you liked here? Because I'm remembering it now, or what I think
Yeah,
you're going
yeah.
to say.
Go ahead, yeah.
Is it the sort of tall, creepy mask
Yeah.
character who sort of comes at them through a hallway?
Yeah, like that was actually like a well done, like cool, creepy scene, and I was like,
Yeah, all
wow,
10
I
seconds
would have
of it
really,
were actually quite good.
yeah,
I agree.
I would have loved to have seen more of that. But
I mean, hell,
like
scrap the whole premise and just give me a movie about this big bitch.
yeah,
Like,
I want to see this, the tall bitch, yeah.
I know, that's a good choice. I was going to say where they see the big ogre kaiju looking thing, but now you've reminded me about that. Yeah, to be honest, it was genuinely more interesting than anything that we actually got in the loops we saw.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, like you said, that whole scene is probably like ends up being like between 10, 20 seconds of them just watching on their phone, but it's giving you all the possibilities of like oh, this could have been the stuff we've been seeing, like them running into all these things.
Yeah, we just have to assume the battery on the phone is also looping every time, like they go back. Like that's why it's not running out.
Yeah.
But yet somehow has all the recordings from every loop.
Mm-hmm.
Don't think about it too much. All right, MVP, Tim.
No. I mean, definitely not going with the main characters. They're very bland. It's kind of tough because I do think, Peter Stormare is like a very like unique, engaging actor. I don't know. He just has that like accent or the way he talks. Like I feel like just instantly kind of pulls you in. But it did frustrate me just how like little I felt like they justified his presence and the explanations.
I feel like it doesn't work in the movie as it is, but I feel like he's closer to what the movie's tone should have been, because he actually feels a little cheesier than everyone else.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I don't know. I guess I found it frustrating, but I'll give it to him. Yeah, I was trying to debate between him or the psychic girl, who was probably I thought the most interesting or notable of the friends group. But I mean, again, similarly, like I thought the psychic stuff and some of the possession stuff was like interesting, but they don't really end up doing much with her. Then she just kind of disappears for the last third of the movie, basically.
Yeah, it was slim pickings. Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to say Peter Stormare as well, but it is slim pickings. I can't really say much else. All right, what are you rating it, Tim?
Again, it's not like, I mean, we mostly had negative stuff to say, but at the end of the day, like I think it's watchable. Like it didn't make me mad. It's not. I guess it starts to slow down as you go forward, but I didn't find it like boring at first. Maybe by the time we get to like the final third or whatever, I'm a little checked out. But again, there's much more movies, or there's more movies we've watched that have been like much more egregious than this. But I mean, I can't go super high. I'm like waffling between like a 3.5 and a 4. I feel like it's a 3.5, but then I don't know. I think it's such a good premise, and there's a few times where like I think that again, like with that phone scene and stuff, where I'm like, oh, maybe they are gonna present the premise that I want. So like I don't know. I kind of want to go to a 4, but I think my heart is telling me it's more of a 3.5, which I don't know. It's pretty low, but whatever.
Yeah. That's verging into like terrible or almost terrible levels. I don't know if I can quite call it terrible. I think to me a 4 out of 10 seems right. I think there was probably for the first half of the movie I would have probably said, oh, this isn't that good, but it's like a 5. I think the last third of it did drag it down that extra point for me, where I was just kind of so disengaged from everything going on. So yeah,
I agree.
I got to go with the 4 ultimately. So sadly not very good, but like Tim alluded to earlier, we probably will be checking out the new Final Destination when it's in theaters, which it'd probably be
2 weeks.
yeah it'd probably be 2 weeks after,
or I mean whenever this episode comes out.
Yeah, well, I think it'll be 2 weeks after this comes out, because this will go out this week, and then there'll be Oddity, and then I think so. Anyway, so we'll see for that. That's not next, of course, though. I think next should be Oddity, which is the episode we already recorded. That should be the next movie. Still catching up in 2024 movies. We got a couple of those left. That said, though, they're getting kind of spread out a little bit as we're starting to squeeze in 2025 movies. Once we do have our top 10 of 2024 out of the way, though, we will go back, we'll circle round and do earlier 2025 movies that we didn't get to. Yeah, seemingly the pace of us going to see new movies that are coming out is a bit higher than it has been for a couple of years, which I don't even know if it's because Tim's kids are older, or if it's just because he's living next to a movie theater. Like, it's probably more the latter than the former. But regardless, we seem to be keeping a better pace. So We'll see you for Final Destination Bloodlines in a couple of weeks, which I just saw because I was looking it up. Is almost 2 hours long, so better be lots of good death scenes in that.
Okay.
Better be good. Check out the Patreon if you want to support the show and all the other stuff we do in MailFuzz Movies. You can do that over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. We just started recording the monthly bonus episodes again for Patreon or for YouTube members. And the schedule for those might be a little rough for a while still before Tim goes into his permanent new house. But we've already planned for the next one we're recording, so they should be relatively consistent going forward. So we did what did we do last? We did New Life last time, and we've got like a silly 80s slasher coming up on the next one. So if that sounds like fun, you can go and check out that. But any support from Patreon or YouTube memberships or even YouTube thanks or anything like that, support from anywhere is greatly appreciated. So thank you very much for joining us. Keep watching scary movies, and we will see you next time.